Hi everyone, my name is Matt and welcome to my channel. We're at the tail end of Orktober, and all month our Discord members have been working hard on our Orktober challenge entries. Stick around to the end of the video and we'll take a look at the entries and crown the winner. Orc armies can have a lot of models, and one way of adding variety to an army is in the skin tones. You can get a huge variety of greens with just a few paints, simply by layering them in different combinations. So let's grab our brushes and get started. I began by priming the models in my favorite method, beginning with gray primer all over, followed by a generous amount of white paint with my airbrush. I focused mostly on the top and sides, resulting in a subtle, zenithal style undercoat with white on the top, blending to gray on the underside. Orc skin from Vallejo Xpress color is my favorite green, and I'll use it as a base tone for half of the models. Just like with contrast paints, I like to work on one section at a time and apply plenty of paint so it flows into all the recesses. Then I'll use the brush to soak up any excess paint as needed. Another great green color is Kroak green. It's more of a grayish green color, which we don't usually see on orcs. Even though this is labeled as a shade paint, it still works in much the same way as a contrast paint. Work on one section at a time, use plenty of paint, and then soak up any excess with the brush. With the orc skin and Kroak green base coats done, let's start layering in different combinations. Over a base coat of orc skin, I painted a second layer of orc skin to deepen the color. Then I shaded it with Biel-Tan green. Rather than paint the shade all over, I painted it directly into the deepest recesses and where the skin meets up against the fabric. On some areas like the fingers, you might find it faster to paint the shade more broadly and wipe away excess with your finger. To highlight the skin, I used a mix of Moot green and toxic yellow. The exact ratio will vary depending on how light your initial prime was and how heavily you applied the previous layers, so adjust the mix until it looks right to you. Now is a great time for me to ask you to do those YouTube things that we all love so much. If you're liking the video so far, please give it a like. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content. If you really like what I'm doing here and want to support the channel further, consider being a channel member. We have some perks including a Discord server and early access to videos. Over a base coat of orc skin, I shaded the model with Biel-Tan green. This combination is my usual go-to for orcs and goblins. After the Biel-Tan green shade dried, I painted a second layer directly in the deepest recesses. Next I highlighted the skin with a mix of Skarsnik green and a touch of toxic yellow. I didn't have to add much, and depending on how dark your shade got, you might not need to add any toxic yellow at all. Over a base coat of orc skin, I painted a glaze with Casandora yellow. My goal here is a very thin layer that tints the skin slightly, and I want to prevent any paint from pooling in the recesses. After the glaze dried, I shaded the model with Athonian Camoshade. Rather than paint the shade all over, I used a fine brush to paint it directly into the deepest recesses. I highlighted the skin with a mix of Ogryn camo and toxic yellow. The exact ratio will vary depending on how heavily you painted the previous layers. I ended up using quite a bit of toxic yellow in my mix. Over a base coat of orc skin, I applied a shade of Kroak green. Kroak green is a fairly weak color, so I painted a generous amount of it. After the Kroak green dried, I shaded the skin one more time with Biel-Tan green, and I painted it directly into the deepest recesses. I highlighted the skin with a mix of Skarsnik green and toxic yellow, this time with more toxic yellow in the mix compared to the second model. Over a base coat of orc skin, I painted a layer of Athonian Camoshade. I'd like the skin to be a little bit darker, so I painted a second layer after the first one dried. Next, I highlighted the skin with Elysian green. I thinned the paint slightly and painted the highlight as a soft glaze, focusing on most of the raised edges. I mixed some flash Gitz yellow into the Elysian green for the next highlight, and I concentrated on the upward facing edges. I wanted to highlight the skin one more time, so I mixed a little toxic yellow into the previous highlight mix. Over a base coat of Kroak green, I painted a second coat of Kroak green. This is a fairly weak color, so you may want to paint a third layer. After the Kroak green dried, I shaded the deepest recesses with Nuln oil. I highlighted the skin with a mix of Nurgling green and a small amount of white. You may need more or less white in the mix, depending on how many layers of Kroak green you painted. Over a base coat of Kroak green, I painted a layer of Biel-Tan green shade. After the Biel-Tan green dried, I painted a layer of Coelia green shade. Warboss green is a really close match to the overall skin tone, so next I smoothed out any uneven areas with a light glaze. Then I painted one more highlight on the edges of the skin with Skarsnik green. Over a base coat of Kroak green, I painted a glaze of Casandora yellow, making sure to keep the paint very thin and avoid any pooling. Next I shaded the deepest recesses with Athonian Camoshade. To highlight the skin, I mixed Toxic Yellow with Elysian Green, about a 2-to-1 mix. Over a base coat of Kroak green, I painted a layer of orc skin. Next I reinforced the deepest shadows with a layer of Biel-Tan green. For the highlight color, I mixed together some Toxic Yellow and Moot green, about a 2-to-1 mix. If you want to add some color to their ears and noses, it's really easy to do with some glazing. I like using a peach color, thinned with water. I would avoid using any strong or vibrant colors like a bright red. I think they can easily overpower the green, and I think it's better to be subtle. After painting the models, I glued them to my Ash Wasteland bases, and you can see how I made them in this video here. We had our first channel competition this month, and to celebrate Orktober, the challenge was to paint a green skin model from any Games Workshop game system. The entries were really impressive, and I'd like to share them with all of you. Saucy IRL painted up this awesome Orc Dreadnought. I really like that yellow color. And check out all the attention to detail on the freehand. Pretty much every corner of the model has something cool going on. Lawbro painted this really vibrant Mazrog. I think the bright yellow and blue are a really good combination, and that glowing blue eye on Big Champa is a great touch. And the earthy brown tones are a nice contrast. It helps the bright colors pop without overwhelming the color scheme. Corvus painted this classic Orc Warboss model from Games Day 2007. What really stands out to me is the blending on the skin, especially the color shift on the lip, ears, and elbows. It's really well done. I also like the narrative with the two swords on the base, like they just finished up a battle and they're admiring their work. Fluffy David painted this Orc Commando, and I love the color choices here. That's got to be one of the greenest orcs I've ever seen. I also really appreciate the bright colors everywhere else, the grenades, the yellow axe handle, and especially that bluish-gray used to highlight the black. Bare Necessities went all out on this Halloween-themed megaboss, and it's no surprise that this model won the popular vote in Discord. Just look at that awesome glowing effect all around the pumpkin head. All the colors work really well together. The armor is really well done too, crisp edge highlights, and I like that blue-gray color. It's unique, and it complements the rest of the color scheme. Great attention to detail on the base too. I'd like to give a big shout out to our channel members. Thank you so much for your support. It really is a huge help. If you want to be like these amazing people and help support what I'm doing here, just click the join button down below. Thank you. After finishing up the unit of Gretchin, I really like the variety of skin tones. The unit looks cohesive, but each model has a little bit of individuality. What do you think? Do you like each model in your army to be unique, or do you prefer them all the exact same? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and until next time, happy painting.